excited about AI. What I would love to know from each of you is, what does AI give you that you don't think you would have otherwise? What are you able to create with AI that you couldn't without it?
So, my journey with AI has been less about what I can create specifically rather than all the varieties of things that I could create. And my industry being in animation, you would think maybe the first thing I would try to do is recreate animation. But more than anything, as you guys can appreciate and understand, AI as a tool in our animation industry could be a very, very polarizing, sensitive topic. But for me, it was really about understanding the tool, understanding what it can do, understanding how good it is, and what is my involvement in it. So to answer your question specifically, it was a little bit of everything. It was like experimenting with generative AI, music, sound, audio, cloning, like voice cloning, everything. It was like, what does it do well? What does it do best?
All right. It gives you so many things. What is it? It's hard to boil it down, but I think if I could boil it down, it's given me a new process more than anything, and that will, doesn't matter what the tool is. I think fundamentally how I make work will be different forever. And what that process now entails, which is exciting, is being able to fail a lot sooner. I think failure is really an important part of the creative process that maybe people don't like to talk about, but it's better to fail earlier than to fail later, and to see whether your idea is working, whether it has legs. And that process, you'd have to go through so many steps before to fail. And I think you can, and with every time you fail, you kind of learn, okay, that was good, I liked that aspect of it, I didn't like this aspect of it. And you learn a bit about yourself and why you're making something every time you do put something out. And so if you can output faster, you can learn more of your voice and more of what it is that makes you you. So I think that expediting that process to learn about yourself is something that AI has given me that I don't know if I had access to before.
Yeah, totally. Learning about yourself, but also being able to step outside of yourself in interesting ways. I think I've always taken a very discursive approach to AI, examining the data set, looking at what you can put into it, what comes out, and then seeing where you stand in relation to that output. Does it mean something? Are you projecting meaning onto it? What unique sort of axiomatical capacities as a human being are you employing to say, this is good or bad? Different ways of interpreting taste and meaning. I don't know. All these things that come from within us normally that you can kind of project onto a different space. But also, if you're really interested in generating stuff based on your own history, then it allows you to examine your own history and examine yourself and find interesting ways to pivot and make creative course corrections and react to your own past that I find really compelling as an artist.
Just perhaps gonna agree with everything that's said, but I think it's, to summarize, I guess for me, from what I've seen over the last years, a lot of artists work with these tools as to do a lot with the process, as we're saying. I think a lot of times we just focus too much on the final thing that it's being made, but actually probably the process is the most important aspect. And these are tools to iterate faster, differently, and in a much unique way, or just different way. And the process, that part of having a different process, I think is the unique aspect of these tools.
Well, it's really interesting. So, you talk about the polarization aspect of AI, which is, certainly a factor right now. But at the same time, it's all of you are talking about process and failure, basically learning more ways to fail. And tell me about that, about what AI can do like that. Why is AI, and I don't mean this sarcastically, a positive tool for failure?
So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of self-editing I feel like you do in the creative process that before you even maybe commit something to page, before you even engage in a conversation with another person, you're like, well, that's gonna be too crazy. That's gonna be too ambitious, too expensive, too stupid. I'm just not gonna say that. the AI becomes this like sort of confidant or something. Maybe not a therapist, but in a way you could use it as a sort of form of art therapy of like, the self-discovery, but also then getting outside of yourself and finding pathways that you wouldn't have discovered before. So that like journey, that internal journey is fundamentally unique to AI. I don't think there's any way to kind of recreate that, because you're fully like liberated, and there's no judgment to AI yet, until Judgment Day or whatever. There's no judgment yet with AI, and so I think that's why it's okay to fail in those kind of self-contained things, where I think even if it's like subconscious, even if you feel like you're like, oh, I'm like this whatever really creative person, I don't care what people think of me, there's still something subconscious of like what you say before you bring it to someone else. So I think that kind of isolated experience is interesting. I still believe in collaborating with other people is also really important to get out of your bubble, but before you even go to someone else, having this kind of internal experience is totally unique.
You're brewing ideas for yourself, right? Coming up with an idea. Like I can be very obsessive when it comes to a certain quality of work, but you can only push people so far before they start pushing back. Here it's like I could just like be as critical to myself and just keep doing iteration after iteration and punish myself. And until I could see what it's going to be, and if it's going to go in the wrong direction, I can pivot, go a different direction. I mean, it's just I feel like it's the right tool for me because I'm much more of an introvert. I do like to interact with people. I do, but at the same time, it's like being alone in front of my computer at whatever hour I want it. Whatever it is, I can just like get obsessed with like tweaking, and I'm not hurting anybody's feelings with that too, so.
Yeah, I mean, trying and failing is an essential part of making anything, and there's only so many times you can try in a lifetime. Like, life is short, but with AI tools, you can iterate within a space of possibility that you articulate, that you like want it to determine, an infinite amount of stuff at an enormous volume, and then you have the freedom to go through and make these decisions about what you like. It just opens up a much larger kind of gradient of possibility, and you can make much more nuanced decisions about what it is that you like. You can also respond, against things that you find, really like abject or whatever. You can say, this is not what I want, and that also allows you to find a new space as well. So, yeah.
So, in terms of AI really impacting the process, as you say, it's reshaped the process of the way you work, and this is, I'm saying this knowing it's an impossible question to answer perfectly, but do you think it has also changed your work? Do you think it's actually, you're creating something that you would not be creating otherwise without that process?
I always say that AI has given me an ear for the weird. Like a lot of things that I would have previously thought was too weird or too formally experimental or too sort of like left of center, so to speak, I'm like really interested in, even in my own writing outside of any kind of mediated AI writing experience. I'm looking for that feeling, especially now that AI is getting like better and better. Like I'm looking for the wonkiness actually, and the failure, and like the sort of odd relationship to language. And maybe that's gone forever, and that's just it's my candle to hold actually at this point, is to try to like make things that AI would have made 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. It has shifted the kind of path and the work that I make. But I think it is actually closer to the things that I want to be making. So like I was saying before, it was like because I could try and fail sooner, I can get down that road sooner as well. And it has made my work more weird, and things that so it like lowers the stakes in a way where you're like, you don't have to like be as precious with everything. Yeah, there's a lot of times where I'm like, oh, like that would be really cool, but how do I get a bunch of people on board to do that weird idea that may not work? So I think leaning into the oddity of AI is something that is unique to the tool that I think some people get obsessed with trying to recreate, the normal, and that ends up kind of coming out a little bland. And I think if you can lean into something that is inherently unique, the sort of side effects of the training data and not the training data itself, you can discover something, that can be really rewarding.
For me, it's interesting. It's kind of a different approach. For me, it's like, can I use any of these tools in a way where people don't notice it at all, so that it doesn't stand out, that people aren't distracted by the tool that I'm using? Because what I tend to work on mostly is comedy. So for me, what's still important is that the joke has to come through, the joke has to come out, the emotions have to come out. And if the AI tool is interfering with that, then I have to tweak it, I have to adjust it. So for me, it's really like, I don't want AI to pull focus away from character, from story, from the comedy. So I'm trying to figure out, like, can I do that? And so I test to see, like, if I can blur the lines, if I can almost have it be an invisible tool.
Claire or Paul or Joel, can you give me an example of what it's like to have that moment when you're working with AI, when you're trying, like, when you're sitting down, what happens? What is the thing that you're doing to have that interaction? You're sitting in front of your computer. What are you looking at?
Is it almost like an aha, like a bit of an aha moment?
It's like, how many aha moments can you have? I guess, like, you get addicted to having aha moments, maybe, because you get this rapid
do you think
response.
sometimes you don't know exactly what you want? No, it's like you're just.
I think I know what I want usually, but it's also like not being stuck in your ways, to being open to a better idea, which when I'm directing and on set with other humans, and maybe the gaffer has a good suggestion for something the DP and I weren't even considering. Whatever, like, you kind of leave yourself, you kind of try to control a situation, and then you leave yourself open to better ideas that come to the table. So I think having like a thesis is going into something, will feel like whenever you present this to someone, it'll feel like you're in good hands, that you're guiding the audience somewhere, but and you have ability to gut check what you're doing. So the thing that can be, like, I guess the flip side of the coin of, like, getting addicted to having aha moments is then you're like, well, which is the best aha moment? You're like, there's like, out of like 300 things I made, like 75 of them are good, but I can only use 5 things. And so I think you have to know in your gut, and you have to listen to your intuition more than ever to know how to, like, edit and how to kill your babies.
Well, that's going to seem like a real challenge, because in terms of, like, analysis paralysis, right? I mean, because with, if you're an analog creator and, the tyranny of the blank page, and you're trying to find some ideas, and finally you find something good, you hold on to it, and now you're saying, I can have 75 of those moments. Like, how in the world do you start filtering through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the more you do it, the more you're like, is this working? Is this not working? And I think also the more work you make, the more you realize how killing good ideas is just natural to the process, and not to be too precious, because there's always going to be a good idea in the future. I mean, you've been in a million writers' rooms, and there's been probably a million amazing jokes you've heard over the years. And you're like, oh, well, it just doesn't fit in the episode, but you kind of like learn to, like, let go at a certain point.
With each aha moment that I've had where I've done something and I'm like, oh my God, can't believe it. I have to have, like, a certain technical eye and like analyze what I just created. And usually with every aha moment, there's also an issue that I discover, that a new problem arises that I have to figure out now. How do I address this? How do I fix this? Is it with compositing? Is it with the clarity? Is it with the resolution? Is it with the timing of the motion? And a lot of times these results are baked in. They're all baked together. So then, what can I do with it? So then one result usually for me creates another challenge, a challenge that I embrace, a challenge that I get excited about, because it's like, oh, I just discovered something new that I didn't realize was now going to be an issue and a problem, that now I need to figure this part out. So for me, it's been a fun, exciting adventure, a puzzle that I just continually am like tweaking and trying different things.
Yeah, just speak to your thing about analysis paralysis. I think early on in my relationship to AI, I had this feeling like, oh, I'm going to learn the algorithm of me, and I'm going to like learn the secret to what makes my work the way that it is. Like I'm going to decode it. And the more I did it, the more I realized that the only like quote unquote algorithm is just like the choices that I make at any given moment that are incredibly arbitrary sometimes. And when you have so many options on the table that could be good, it's like you just kind of have to divest yourself of any like preciousness about one thing or another and just commit to something, because you don't know what it's going to become down the road once you've made that commitment, how it's going to evolve and iterate once you sort of live with it and start trying to play with it and adapt to it and so on. So it's kind of freeing in a way, because it makes you realize like, oh, anything could be interesting if you just want it to be, you know, if you just try.
So AI is, we're in its like baby stages. We don't, and I'm going to ask you more about that in a moment. But I'm curious, and all of you are sort of at the forefront of what we understand AI to be now, and at the same time, it's very controversial. So what do your creative peers feel about AI? Where do they fall on the spectrum?
I would say a lot of my creative peers probably, well, I already know firsthand because I've made a couple posts, like say, for example, on Instagram, and I get a lot of vomit emojis and things like that. And look, like I respect it, I understand their point of view, but ironically, I would say, what are they dismissing? Are they dismissing the technology? Because also what I'm presenting, I'm not really presenting anything that threatens what they do. What they're doing is something very specific in terms of like, in their art form. But the ironic thing that I just wanted to point out is some of the people that make these comments to me are the same people that embrace a certain technology in the industry at the same time. That was another inflection point in our industry. I just see this is another tool that we need to play with, research, try, experiment with. But the short answer of your question, though, like the general reaction, I think there's a lot of nervousness, there's a lot of fear. Look, and I think that was one of the primary reasons why I wanted to get my hands on the tool, because is this fear warranted? Is it is it justified? And I'm seeing firsthand, what it really takes to create something that is truly usable. And so I do think the reaction, I think they themselves need to take time to play with it and experiment. But I take it all in stride. Look, you're never going to make anybody, you're always going to have people that are going to hate. People love to hate. I mean, just people love to do that. So it's just that you just got to keep, if you believe in it, you just got to keep doing it and try things and experiment and create. It's my opinion. Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, it's almost become like cool to hate AI on a certain sects of the internet, and like, part of me is like, oh, it'd be cool to like hate AI. I want to be in that crowd of AI haters. They seem like they're like smoking cigarettes and saying fuck this. I don't know. It also seems like the people that are the more you hate something, the more you fear something. It's like clearly like the less they understand, and you're not gonna win everyone over, but I do encourage people that are scared to actually put their hands on it and see for themselves what it takes to make something. But in terms of peers, I think the reality is there are more people using it than they'd like to admit. I think so there's a lot of people that I've even seen people like that pretend to like be anti-AI, and then I find out that like they are using Midjourney, they are using ChatGPT, and but like on Instagram or whatever, they like try to like take a stance. And so I know people are using things. So I think that's the kind of vibe. No, I'm not gonna call anyone out, but yeah, I think people there's going to be a point where it's undeniable, and I think that some of the peers that like want to appear like they are taking a stance against something also realize the undeniable power of this technology, and so they're going to adopt it, but they don't maybe want to be the tip of the spear. And I didn't mean to make myself, the tip of the spear. It just happened accidentally. But that's just because I guess I'm not like as like scared of what people think.
When do you think it will happen that you're going to see a mainstream Hollywood director? Because I'm sure they're out there already playing with it, as you say, though no one's admitting to it. When do you think they're going to come clean?
I think this is like some May 2025. Yeah. I think it's soon. I mean, Chris talks to people, like there are people that are playing with it at a higher level, and I don't know who it was, it Daniel or someone was saying like Fincher used video. We were talking about this before the thing that like once like a bigger director uses a new technology, then it kind of makes it more palatable, and that's going to happen. It's just inevitable. But yeah, I think the resistance is just part of transition.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on resilience. I think like technologies come along all the time that threaten to displace artists in all kinds of ways. I mean, in music, it's like the big examples are synthesizers, drum machines, etc. Digital production. You can either react strongly against that, or you can take that and incorporate it into your work to create something new. I mean, that's happened many times in the history of film, in the history of art in general. Like, you take a synthesizer, and instead of being afraid that now you are putting the string quartet out of work, now you use it to make hip-hop, techno, post-punk, everything interesting, and you make yourself essential to it so that you can never be removed from it. And I imagine that that will be a similar process of kind of selectively embracing and reinventing and kind of kicking the tires and creating new forms, which is happening.
Cristobal, tell us a little bit about where you see AI going, because obviously, you know, you're at the forefront of this, and the only thing that I think we have a clear sense about with AI is that it iterates at a speed faster than anything we've seen before, to a magnitude, and so it's really hard to get a grasp of what we understand AI to be now versus what it will be a year from now versus 5, 10, whatever from now. Can you give us any kind of clues about the direction it's going to be going?
I can try. I think there are two parts of it. One is there's some sort of guidance or prediction as to where some models and capabilities will be within the next couple of months and years. And then there's not only that, but it's also what people are going to build on top of those things. And I think that second part, I don't know, because that's why we have artists pushing those boundaries. And Claire, you've been working on AI since, like, I guess you're like the OG of AI art.
1,000 AI years.
1,000 of years
4
ago.
years.
Like 7 years ago, it was like. But that's the point where, like, the things that you were making 7 years ago were radically different to the things that you can do now, and that help inform what you can do now. And so what you can do in 2 years and 3 years will be different from what you can do now. And that's kind of the point. That's the point of every technology, is just allows you to do new things. From a technical standpoint, I think we're going to get really soon to not only better, realistic, and consistently videos for long format as well, but also very soon at some point real time. And so I think that's...
So, just stop it for a second. What do you mean when you say real time? What does that really mean?
Like real time. Like you're watching something and it's being generated as you're watching it. I think that for me is not only... That's not if it's going to happen. I think it will happen, and there's already a lot of research being done to make it happen. And it looks that it's going to open a frontier of creative possibilities that... We're discussing this as film, because these are the words that we have to express what we're seeing right now. And I guess we're speaking about the camera as well. When the camera was first invented, or actually daguerreotypes were first invented, people didn't have the words to express what it meant. And so they refer to photography as mirrors with memories, because that helped kind of like encapsulate the feeling of what we're seeing. And I think we're doing something similar now, where we're looking at this media type and we're seeing it as film. But I think eventually it's going to create a new art form, a new media type that we just don't have the words yet to describe. And the words will not come from any company, from any person in particular, will come from the collective group of people, like here, experimenting with those tools. And I think that for me is the most interesting aspect of it, that it's still yet to be done.
So that's really interesting. And it's like, you know, you're saying that's a great phrase, mirrors with memories. I did not know that. That AI will be an art form in and of itself. Do you have any grasp of what that would be like?
I don't necessarily, because I feel like, again, we're so early. It's the 1800s of the camera, and we're trying to predict what cinema will look like. It's very hard. I do feel that there's some principles that will always be there, which is, it's less about, cinema is not about the camera. Cinema is about artists and creators and visionaries who can tell a story with a technology and a device, and then use that device to tell that story. You never go and watch a movie because what camera was used to watch the movie. But AI will feel like similar. I think I really wish at some point that we'll just stop referring to AI and not AI content, and we just see content and art and stories and just forget about how it was made. And that form function, I think, should be a form function that feels natural to how we communicate ideas and express with each other. It should be a function and a system that understands your intentions and can help you, exactly what we're discussing here, iterate faster, fail faster, be willing to like explore ideas that are weird, that you've never thought of before. And again, it's less for someone in particular to define and more for people to explore.
Do you think that AI is going, because it's really interesting because you're talking about AI as a potential form unto itself, and of course AI is a tool. And AI is a tool, I mean, an analog might be like CGI, and CGI is a tool that we're all very familiar with from films, but nobody goes to see a CGI film. We go see films that have CGI in them, but that's not a selling point. But do you think that it's possible that AI could be a form that would be a discrete entity unto itself?
I think so. We just don't have the way to fully understand it yet, because we need to experiment with it yet. And we're going to have a way of referring to it as like films and this sort of artists that will work with it. So I think a good perspective on that is I don't think we're going to replace filmmakers. I think filmmakers and analogs way of doing stuff will still be there. This is just different. It will be a different form function. And again, the people at the frontiers are the ones that are going to help shape what that kind of like looks like.
What do you think in terms of the anxiety around AI? I mean, there's a low-level fear of the idea that AI is going to replace filmmakers. And obviously, if you're talking to certain studios and production companies, they're looking at it and going, yes, we can reduce our costs. But in the world of AI that you understand, it's like, is AI even an option in terms of creating something unto itself?
I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I think at least for me is it's more about you can choose. You can choose what you want to use. You can still use paints to paint a picture. You can use a camera. You can use AI. You can use whatever you want. I think more than jobs, I think tasks are what we need to focus on. Like, I think what you're all describing is like the processes. Again, it goes back to the process. It's like a process has a way of doing something, and you have a tool or a task to do that. If you can help change the task to make it faster, cheaper, better, then great, because you can experiment more. And so that task will always be there. The role of the artist will always be there. That task will change because technology is changing. I think that's a better way of making sense of how to think of the technology, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, automation is not new. We've been automating things for over 150 years almost. But yet we're still like busy all the time. So like automation hasn't really solved like our time management problems. So I think we're just going to reallocate time to other things, and we're going to make more things. We're going to maybe spend more time on the idea phase. We're going to try to spend more time making something better versus just like, I mean, there is an aspect of the indie film side that's exciting. That's like, we don't need the huge team. But I do think like even like Pixar, it's like, it's technically it's like faster to render now than it was when they made Toy Story, but they still spend like years making a film because they're trying to sharpen the film and make it as you constantly just move time around, and I don't think automation's gonna like totally change the game that way in that process, but there is a world where there could be a new lane that is somewhere between some sort of interactive and entertainment that could be, like you're saying, real-time generation. But I don't ever see that competing with something that would be up for an Oscar ever. Sorry, go for it.
I was just going to add a quick example of how technology has impacted, say, for example, animation production. So, I was on The Simpsons in the mid-90s when it was on film. And when the show was on film, each cell of animation was hand-painted by hand. And so I was part of the team to get it to a digital format. So I don't know how many of you understand the process of making a half-hour cartoon, but it takes back then, it took about 9 months to make an episode of The Simpsons. And to this day, now we have computers, we have rendering, we do all the ink, we call it ink and paint, we do all the painting with computers. We do all of our storyboarding on computers. We have tablets, that we draw in. We have editing machines. We used to edit on tape, like physical tape, and obviously now we edit in software like Premiere, Avid, things like that. You know how much faster we make the shows now? It takes us about 11 months and 12 months to make an episode. So think about the advancement of technology and how it's made our process longer. What I would say though, the time that we do save, I don't mean to just like crap over like all the advancements we made in technology and animation, but what we do, honestly, what we do with the savings the time savings, we put it back into the show. We just make more revisions. We punch up we punch up episodes, we punch up jokes. So we put it back into the show. But you guys are the judges. You look at the early episodes of The Simpsons back when it was on paint, on film, versus you judge it now. I'm not saying which is better, but you can make your own opinion on that. So, it's like technology, like you said, we find ways to keep ourselves busy regardless.
And we have to wrap it up here, but thank you guys so much for this. This has been awesome.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
having us.
Thank you.